so excited.
It's time for Two Guys and a Goalie with Dustin Nielson, Matt Cassian, and the goalie, Joaquin Gage.
Good afternoon.
What is happening? That was awesome. That was electric, Gage.
Yeah, thanks.
This is exciting. That just made my
exciting.
My heart rate jump.
You know what? I'm so happy you're here too, because I actually I see him often. I see your nephew, but I got to tell everybody that your nephew is way better looking than you are, and what a fantastic young man. Plays the drums. Not you, Gager.
Yeah,
you're talking about my nephew Owen.
I'm talking about your nephew Owen, who has beautiful curly hair.
He does,
and is great at ball hockey. I'll say that. And he's great at playing the drums, and he's an absolute stud. What a kid he is! Actually, he's a fantastic individual. Love him.
Thank you, Cass. That means a lot. I love that kid. I actually I have a problem. I like trucks.
Okay.
I like trucks a lot. So I had at one point 5 trucks, and it was getting out of control. My wife said, we got to get rid of one.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that my nephew Owen, who is, he is
going to be a heavy duty mechanic.
Yeah, heavy duty mechanic. He's going through school and doing all the right things, and he needed a truck. So I sold him my truck, and every time I go, we were just over there for family dinner at my brother Alan's house last weekend, and here I get to see my truck all the time. So it's still near and dear to me.
Is it hard to see it?
It is. He's done better though. I did give him heck off the bat. I'm like, dude, get all this crap out of the box. Like, what are you doing? You can't do that. So he did that. He's gotten some nice rims. He's a young guy. He's trying to make it look all cool. But all the credit to him. He has taken care of it. It's an old truck. It's an 03 Sierra.
Oh wow!
But it's 4-wheel drive. It's 4-door. It's got everything he needs.
Yeah.
But beautiful truck. So thank you, Cass. That was very well said. Welcome. I am not Dusty. I am the glue guy filling in for Dusty. He is off to a hockey tournament. So you're stuck with me. But thankfully we have local legends Matt Cassian and Joaquin Gage here to join us on Two Guys and a Goalie. Two Guys and a Goalie is brought to you by GS Construction, setting the industry standard for 50 years with quality, efficiency, and safety driving their success. GS Construction is a foundation built on teamwork, and now they want you to become a part of the team. Visit www.gsconstruction.ca and click Ready to Work, or visit their page at indeed.ca. With the Next Person Up program at GS Construction, it's not just a job, it's a career. Cass, we heard from you off the top. Now let's hear from our goalie here, Joaquin. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to today. It's a game day, of course. It's nice to be with Cass again, although it's better in studio. But I get a double dose of Cass later. I believe you're on the pre and post game, so I always like to tune in and on tune in to listen to Cass's game changers. I always find them interesting.
I do too. Yeah,
it's funny because when Tommy, if I ever have to do it, and they can't find Cass, obviously, I try to be as creative as possible. But then Cass is not only creative, but his makes sense. Mine are just, I think I threw an expecto patronum thing out there, and not only
no, that's beautiful. I love that though, Gager. That's right on my alley.
Sometimes I go all Harry Potter, so a lot of people don't get it. But Cass, don't let me know. I'll wait till tonight to listen to the Game Changers, but good to see you, buddy. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, I haven't. Good to see you too. I haven't written them out yet, so I was just kind of chewing on them. And sometimes, it's actually really helpful for me when we have this show in the afternoon, because it's like we get to start to talk about it, process it, and then I start to really think about things, and then can come up with something decent. But I love the thematic ones, Gager, so don't ever change. Like with the Expecto Patronum and the nerd ones, I love that. That's right up my alley. So it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, make sure you tune in tonight to the Oil Stream pre and post game show with Game Changers, brought to you by me, brought to you by Damon Bunting. So yeah,
Cass, I always
go ahead, Joaquin.
I always find when I'm at the game, I view it completely different than if I'm watching it at home. How do you find like both ways?
Yeah.
Or which one do you prefer more?
See, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I mean, it's just like a coach watching a game live as opposed to watching it on video. I find that like when you're there live, you can see stuff behind the play and you see things take shape easier. So you kind of get a general sense of what happened a little bit better than watching live. But watching live, you don't have the ability to pause, rewind, hit play, pause, rewind, hit play, pause, rewind, hit play, which I frequently do, where it's like you want to see something that happened and you can replay it a couple of times in a row before, catching back up. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I mean, I love being in the press box. I love watching from up high. It's an easy game from up there. Like you see every little mistake, which can be very, very helpful. But you can also see when guys make really good plays, and it's not quite as easy, I would say, to identify some of that sometimes watching on TV. But also, that pause and rewind button is clutch, because you can break things down a little bit more than just something happened quick once and now you don't get to see it again. So advantages, disadvantages to both.
Well, I mean, speaking of watching the game live, there is a big game on tonight. Everybody's amped up for this one. Do you guys think, just off the top, just a quick kind of a broad question, is this the most anticipated game for Oilers fans this season?
It's got to be up there with like the second LA game, I think, was pretty anticipated. And the Vegas games are always anticipated.
Sure.
But this might surpass those in terms of what the hope is. Now, if this was Connor McDavid's first game back, I think it would be even more than it is. But you kind of get the feeling that for a lot of fans anyways, like this is a big one. This is a big one for the fans, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. It's being kind of promoted in a way that rivals a combat sports kind of event, right? Like what happened the last time. It's retribution for holding. I love it. I think
retribution for holding. They're going to get back at them for holding the
name
guy.
of this thing should be. And it's kind of silly to me. Like I'm going, why is everyone going like Garland? Everyone's going to go after Garland for taking a 2-minute penalty, and you have people saying they're not even going to walk past the Oilers dressing room and stuff like this. I love it. I think it just adds to it and this is why I love going to the games, because you can feel the energy of the crowd going in, because they're all hyped up, right? And if someone's wearing a Canucks jersey, you can see the side-eye glances to other people. They need more of these things. Like I talked about this when I played in Europe and I played in Germany, and there was called derby games, and where I was in Kassel, Germany, and Frankfurt was the closest other team. So, that would be our derby game. So the fans from Frankfurt would come and we'd do a home at home, and it would just be a massive rival. And I think, although I think the Oilers are kind of closer to LA, but the rivalry between the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers is, I mean, I think it's more, there's more heat to this than I would say the Battle of Alberta is.
Absolutely. Especially given, recency bias, I would certainly agree with that. And that's kind of the first, part. You said it off the top, retribution.
Holding.
For
holding.
Okay. Now here's the thing, guys. I'm not going to sit here and really rehash what already happened. But something did happen that caused the team's captain, the best player in hockey, to snap, and rightfully so. He was suspended. We're done with that. But for tonight's game, okay, it is, and Cass, I'll go to you first, because, I mean, let's face it, you were a tough guy. You would be the guy that would have to answer the bell if something, for a retribution game. Now, my question to you, and Joaquin, I want you to chime in after as well, is Does somebody come talk to you, in the morning skate? Is somebody, tap you on your shoulder as you're going out for warm up? Is there anything said, or is there nothing to be said at all in terms of, let's just say it, retribution tonight?
Yeah. I mean, old school, you wouldn't have to say anything. You would just know. I'd be chomping at the bit, and you're just thinking like, man, I hope I get a chance to take a run at Pettersson or run at Hughes or run at one of their guys and just donkey run it and be like, just to get the emotion up, because it's like, I love me in emotional hockey. Like, it's just so much more fun, and then I get to play more. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to ratchet up the emotion a little bit and bring the crowd into it, especially with it being at home. And there were situations where you'd have your captains, your leadership group, be like, hey, we might need something tonight. I've had coaches that in the past had told me that, where it's just like, hey, like, if you get a chance, like, not telling you to take a run at somebody, but if you're just listening and not watching, I'm winking my eyes, like, don't take a run at somebody tonight. We don't need that. I've had coaches do that too, where they're like, hey, like, we could use some of the spark from that standpoint, but it's a different game now. So I don't know if anyone's sitting there now. Certainly you have some guys, and even with some of his comments to the media about McDavid protecting himself, like a Corey Perry, who's not necessarily going to be out there just running guys, but is going to recognize that you have the opportunity to turn this into an emotional game. And for the Edmonton Oilers, I think they're a better team when they're an emotional team, right? Like, when they are emotionally engaged, they are a better team. Draisaitl plays better. McDavid's not in the lineup, but he plays better, and they kind of pull everyone along. Like, and if those guys are emotionally invested in it, everyone else buys in as well. So I think for some of the players, they're looking at this going like, boys, like, this is, it could be an emotional one tonight. Don't do anything stupid, but bring the heat, right? Bring the heat. Bring the heat, bring the heat, bring that. They can't deal with us if we're playing at that level and we're playing with that intensity. So, I don't think anyone's getting pulled aside, but at the same time, I think there's going to be some guys that maybe a little bit are just like, hey, boys, let's bring it tonight. Like, this is going to be an intense one. But it's different. Where for me, again, back in the day with the dinosaurs, where you're trying to hit someone from behind, maybe not hurt them, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the whole look, when Connor Garland probably touches the puck tonight, there's going to be boos, right?
Sure.
Oh yeah. And that's great. And if, I mean, he's shifty and slick. So, but I mean, if you can get a chance to lay a good one on him in the corner, what have you, if it's an open ice one, perfect. But you will lift that whole building up out of their seats if that happens, right? But the retribution shouldn't be directed at him. It should be more towards the guy that isn't playing tonight, is Tyler Myers, for cross-checking one of your teammates in the face. That's where if he were playing, I would expect everyone to be finishing every check as possible on Tyler Myers, because that was the more vicious of the two cross-checks in my mind. But again, like you said, Cass, you go out there, you're looking to inject some energy, raise the temperature of the game. You're looking for Connor Garland any chance you get to although clean and stuff. But if he touches the puck, you want to make sure that you can get everyone engaged with a good solid check on him.
Well, and that's just it. If you could combine the two, and retribution could also come in the form of a severe ass whooping. At the hands of a 6-1 victory or a 5-1 drubbing, which would be more, I guess, fulfilling.
That's modern retribution, and that is more fulfilling ultimately, right? That's modern retribution for holding.
Yeah, so either form, I think Oilers fans will take it, but it is nice to have that atmosphere and that vibe. You can feel it in the air leading up to this game. There's, and I think it's more a fan-driven animosity than potentially the players, right?
Oh yeah,
is that correct?
That's all we've been hearing about. I mean, we had a game in between, and you're still just talking about the Canucks, right? That's great. Yeah, I love it.
But I don't think it's just a fan-driven animosity, right? Like, I think you looking at that end of it and two suspensions, like there's player-driven animosity there too. And was able to yesterday was down at the rink for an event with Soldier On, which is a charity that supports veterans of the Canadian Armed Forces, which was fantastic event by the Oilers alumni and OEG. But had a chance to chat with a couple of the people in Oilers management who were still at the rink because they were all just leaving as I was walking in. And for some of them, I mean, they're frustrated too. And that I think that like. I can't imagine a world in that dressing room. There's not animosity towards the Canucks for that, right? Like, and again, it's not the same as someone took a run at Connor McDavid and broke his collarbone with a dirty hit from behind, but just the frustration towards, well, this is a division opponent, guys. We played in the playoffs. They're grabbing onto him and seeing how Connor reacted to that. I mean, it's like for Connor, the straw that broke the back in some regards, and that frustration I think is still there, and I think that animosity is very, very real. I don't think this is like fan-driven animosity, guys. Like there's a portion of that, but I think it's because these are real humans in the dressing room that feel real emotions, playing a real game, and I think they feel it too. Like I don't think this is just something that we're blowing up or that the team is blowing up. Like I think they feel it too. Now that may not translate again into just running people, slashing people and violence, but it may just bring out that emotion at a higher level than typical in the what was usually would be the dog days of the season, kind of heading into that Four Nations break.
There's certain rinks that you play in around the league, and I look to Vegas being one of them that does a really good job of like you can inject energy into your team by the participation from the fans, and Vegas does probably the best job in the league by doing that. Don't you think tonight, Cass, that this is one of those games where you almost, I don't know, as a coaching staff, you probably say try to keep the emotions high, but keep them in check, right? You don't want to boil over because I really think there is a massive opportunity for the Edmonton Oilers players to feed off their crowd, especially in that first 10 minutes by doing something, whether it's score a goal, big hit, good play. I think you're going to have more fan engagement. And if you play your cards right and execute and perform at a level, you'll keep the fans engaged, where sometimes, it does turn into your living room with 18,000 other people watching a game at certain points.
Yeah. Do you guys remember that there was an old Ben Stiller movie called Mystery Men? Do you guys remember that movie?
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Fantastic movie. But there's a guy in it called the Sphinx. And one of the things he says, he comes to just the dumb, repetitive proverbs, which are really funny. But one of the things he says, and to Ben Stiller's character, is like, if you do not learn to control your rage will control you. And that's kind of it, isn't it? With what you said, Gager, where it's just like, you want your players to feel that emotion. I think in that room, you want to feel that emotion too, but you can't let it dominate you.
Yeah. Right.
You can't let it get out of control. But you want it to drive you to where it's like you have enough screw you in your game that you want to stomp on these guys, right? You want to, as you said, like beat them into submission, just destroy them 6-1, 7-1, like just give them no hope, no chance, just absolutely dominate them. And that's how you're gonna get to it. But you can't be out of control when you're doing that. Like you gotta keep it within the guide rails. Now, keep it right next to the guide rails, but don't cross over into the ditch.
Don't throw a gutter ball.
Well, never did I have on my bingo board today quoting the movie Mystery Men.
Great movie.
So congrats to you, Cass. That was excellent. Guys, I got to ask you this. Is this rivalry with the Canucks competing with or even stronger and larger than the Battle of Alberta right now? Now, here's the thing, guys. Sure. Here's the thing. Calgary is in a wild card spot right now. There is that separation from the big dogs down to who's going to fight out for that final wild card spot. Calgary's in it right now, and there's not a mention of it anywhere in oil country. Is this just recency bias, or do you think that this Vancouver thing really has legs and can continue? Cass, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, well, it could, and you might be right. It might be recency bias. In this moment, it certainly feels like it. Now, if you would have asked us, like when they had the Heritage Classic, like in Calgary and all that, it's like you still have the vibes from, line brawl against the Flames. Like that, to me, long-standing, it still is the bigger rivalry, the Battle of Alberta. But in this moment, and maybe that's just because of beating them in the playoffs last year, where like recency, I feel like this feels like a bigger deal. And if you're looking between the two teams, even though Calgary is in that wild card spot, you're still, I don't know, maybe you feel like the Canucks are a bigger threat. Maybe because of playoffs last year, but yeah, I mean, in the moment, it feels like it is bigger. But overall, I mean, it's not the Battle of Alberta, but hey, more emotion, more fun, more angst. I'm here for it.
You start building up that animosity towards other fan bases and teams by meeting in the postseason. That's where I think it's mostly generated. And again, you guys have mentioned recency bias playing against the Vancouver Canucks most recently. The Calgary Flames, not so much. But I think this is such a mistake by the league and the scheduling to not take the proper temperature of certain games that happen throughout the season or playoff series. They go, okay, well, these two teams hate each other. And that fan bases hate each other. Let's pit them against one another. Let's get it on prime time. Let's have everyone watch this because that's what you want to see most. You want to see emotionally driven, good hockey games where, it's bordering on, prison rules at times. So I love it. I think the biggest mistake a few years ago was obviously the playoff series against Calgary, but then they only play like 3 times against each other the next year, and they're all in the beginning of the season too. There's no slow burn progression throughout it. I think there could be a better job of cultivating these possible teams that you're going to meet up in the playoffs, just to build it up a little bit more. So there's even, I mean, the guys are going to be emotionally engaged. It doesn't matter come playoff time, but it'll raise it just that little bit more. I think that'll make it even more enjoyable for even the most casual hockey fan.
Well, and
do you guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Cass.
Go ahead. I'll ask my question after.
Okay. I was going to change subjects a little bit and talk about. Obviously, the soundbite of the day yesterday was Connor McDavid, speaking out. And I thought personally, that was it was very well said. I thought the way that he delivered it was under control and did not seem like he was whining about anything, but more so raising an issue that I think we can all. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. I'll ask you first, Gage. But he called out the officiating, and he specifically called out the consistency in calls. What's a penalty in the first period? Should it be a penalty in the third period? What do you think of, you guys are obviously both former NHLers. You have the best player in the game speaking out, very well spoken, and essentially calling out the consistency in officiating. What do you think on that? What's your take on that?
I mean, when I played back in North America, the refs, they did have egos, and they still do to this day too. But the consistency was different, and depending on the ref you got, you kind of had an idea of how the game is, and I'm sure it's similar to what it is now. But what I took from Connor McDavid's statement yesterday, and I think we can all agree is what we want to see from the game mostly. I believe he said a penalty in October should be the same as a penalty in May, right? There should be no difference. And if a team has 9 power plays and the other one has 1, so be it, right? Like, just call the game consistently throughout, and there won't be the need to manage games if there's that consistency throughout. And I know there's going to be mistakes. Like the game, this is the fastest game on 2 feet, right? Like it's very difficult to catch everything. But if you keep it consistent that way, and I hate that whole, well, it's playoffs now, everything changes, and you gotta the stars have to battle through, and you have episodes like Connor Garland basically piggybacking on guys throughout the playoffs, and it's not a penalty. That's detrimental. We want to see great plays, goals, and things like that. We don't want to see hooking and holding. That's why the whole rule change came in the first place. So I don't know, because I mean, even down to the suspensions, everything's cut in half too. Like I don't know how they're going to get away from that. Okay, it's playoff time. Let's That's the new rule book. Let's dust off that playoff rule book because now everything's different.
Cass?
Well, I think, Connor's quote, as you said, was a penalty in the first is a penalty in the third, and a penalty in October is a penalty in April. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. Right. That's what we want. And I don't know, we would have to look, and I know people have pulled up the numbers of like penalties called in the playoffs versus the regular season. I have to take a peek at it again because I can't remember exactly what the ratios are. And I don't know if it's dramatically statistically different, but it is just when you watch, like, that inconsistency is frustrating. And if it's frustrating for us as the fans, it's frustrating for the players. And as a player, all I wanted all the time was to know what is a penalty and what is not a penalty, and call the penalties, right? Like that's what you want. You want to have everything the same. And now referees are each individuals. They're going to see the game differently. So you're going to know there's going to be some difference between them. And I think that's okay. That's fine. But a penalty should be a penalty, should be a penalty at the end of the day, right? Like there's a little bit of gray area. I understand that. But you can't have people reffing the time, reffing the game, trying to make things even. Like, just call the penalties that are penalties and just get more consistent. And it's frustrating for fans, and I don't see it changing. Guys,
well, and it begs the question is, okay, your star is speaking out. Your star is putting himself on a pedestal saying, this is what I see. Cass, I'll go to you first. Do you think the NHL cares, or to add on to that, is going to try and do something about it?
Nope.
I know, right?
What? No, I mean, no. Because this isn't the first time that this has happened, guys. Like, this isn't the first time that you've had a star speak out. We could go back to Crosby, maybe the most recent one. That I can think of anyways, where it was kind of the same issue where he had to come out and say something. And I don't think anything changed league-wide overall. So, I mean, it may help things with Connor in the short term. Like, it may make things more favorable to him if he's speaking out, and referees know that, and the league knows it. But as far as the overall picture, I just don't see that it changes.
You usually get the slight bump, right? If you look to playoffs, coach will come out and say something that, our stars are getting held, and usually there's
get the first two PPs the next game.
Yeah, you go, okay, guys. Well, Connor said this. Let's review. Yeah. So they'll be made aware of this, and they probably get the small interview bump of complaining about refs, and then it kind of evens out and subsides after that. So good on Connor for saying it, because now there'll be a little bit more attention drawn to it, but. Look, like Cass said, I don't envision any other like changes in how they ref the game. Look no further than last year. Every ref was so hot and horny for the cross check, right? Like they were calling every single cross check, and now that penalty doesn't exist anymore.
Well,
right?
Eichel blasts Ekholm into the wall earlier this year, and it's that was just a hockey play.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've talked enough about referees. Let's move on. Okay, here's what I want to ask you guys. As the playoffs come into shape, specifically in the Western Conference, because we'll touch on the Eastern Conference a little bit in Hire It or Fire It, but specifically for the Western Conference, barring trade deadline moves, etc. But what team or teams present the biggest scare to you as we get closer and closer to the NHL playoffs? I mean, obviously Edmonton's a top team, but Winnipeg's playing pretty good. Dallas is playing good. Obviously Vegas, Minnesota. Who presents the biggest scare to the Oilers? Gage, I'll go to you first.
I don't know if I'm more interested to see it, but I kind of look at, who is going to have success in goal against the Edmonton Oilers, right? And who's going to provide the biggest challenge that way? We saw what Vegas was able to do with Aiden, and I still I have Vegas in mind, but unfortunately we haven't been able to see the Edmonton Oilers play against the Winnipeg Jets too much, and I don't know. I find that team with Connor Hellebuck and the way that they're playing, I think it might be the Jets that pose the biggest threat. And this is maybe because they did play the Avalanche, and I saw Mackenzie Blackwood and going great. I think that was the first time he allowed more than 3 goals in a game.
More than 2.
And yeah. So,
since he was acquired.
And they kind of were able to break him down. And I mean, this was at the beginning of the year when they played the Winnipeg Jets, so I can't put much into that game, but I want to see the next game against the Jets and how that unfolds and how they manage that lineup against the Jets, because they seem to, when I look at on paper anyway, they seem to match up a lot better, I think, than some other teams. And I'm not saying that the Knights and the Kings don't, but I find that the Edmonton Oilers can have success and score goals against their goalies. They don't pose as big of a threat as the Winnipeg Jets do.
What say you, Cass?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to argue with that, Gager. You make some compelling points. I mean, Hellebuck's Hellebuck. Yeah. Right? Like if he gets hot, he's going to be tough to beat. And that Winnipeg team, they look still really, really good. They have a lot of depth. They have up front. They have, their defense is playing well. And when you have support for a guy like Hellebuck, he's hard to beat. And he's shown us that in the past against the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, it's not like he's a guy that doesn't have confidence playing against Edmonton. He's had success and had playoff success against them before. So I can't disagree with you, Gager. You make too compelling a point.
Wow.
Shoot, this is terrible.
Darn it.
This is awful.
I got to really throw my hat in the corner of the Colorado Avalanche. As you said, they've got they call it the lumber yard with Wedgwood and Blackwood as your 1-2. I just find that team is just so star-studded. If either of those goalies, I mean, it would probably be Wedgwood, but if they can get on a tear, that is a team. Because you said it, you're only as good as your goalie in the playoffs, and the goalies have to steal you games or series. And I just, with the offensive power that the Colorado Avalanche has, who, by the way, will probably be entering it as one of the lower seeds, that could pick off one of the higher seeds. I'm going to throw my name in the hat of the Colorado Avalanche. Well,
last year they were the team that were able to make Hellebuck look like subhuman, essentially, right? They found a way to score goals against him, and it's always fun to see the big four. So Leon, Connor, McKinnon, Rantanen, to see those 4 guys go at it. And there already seems to be a little bit of, some of that playoff-esque aggression when we saw Rantanen take down Leon, and then Leon gives him a good elbow to the chops when they're on the ice. So they're already building in something. But I just Scheifele, Ehlers, Connor, Morrissey, Hellebuck. It's
crazy. Connor. I mean,
it's a
good team.
That's a good team, and I think you make a good point too with the Avalanche, because they're a quick team too. But I think the Winnipeg Jets are also quick enough to give Edmonton Oilers on the defensive side of the puck a few issues.
Well, and Winnipeg is so by committee.
Yeah.
I mean, the top 6 there has got to be one of the best in the league. Okay, guys, it's time for Hire It or Fire It. And as you are watching Two Guys and a Goalie presented by GS Construction. GS Construction is hiring now. Become a part of their great team today by visiting gsconstruction.ca or their page on indeed.ca. For the past 50 years, the foundation of GS Construction has been built on efficiency, quality, and safety. Take your career to the next level. Join the team at GS Construction. Hire it or fire it, guys. Cass, I'm going to go to you with question number 1. And this will have to do with the Vancouver Canucks and the unfolding issue with JT Miller and what's going to happen there. Hire it or fire it. Forget potentially becoming sellers. The Canucks are already sellers leading up to the trade deadline.
Fire it, because if you didn't have this situation, you wouldn't be, right? So I don't think as a whole it means they're going to completely retool. Maybe you end up being forced to, but no, I don't think this. So I'm going to fire it. I don't think they're already selling. I don't think this counts. This doesn't count to me. They're not a willing seller in this situation. They're a forced seller in the situation, so I'm going to fire it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cass. Just because of the situation, it's a fire it for me, because they've been put into this situation with Pettersson and Miller. It does look like Miller's the guy that they have been shopping, but when you're a seller, it's usually you're taking back talent, picks, prospects, things like that. Canucks aren't going to be looking for picks and prospects, I don't think, with Miller. They would be looking more for replacement than anything else. And it's just trying to find that certain deal that brings you the most value back for, let's face it, a really good player, but seems to just have, it's just not working in that dressing room.
Well, and it is a tough situation because you have a player in JT Miller who's a hell of a hockey player, but it's been noted that it's been an issue in the locker room, or he has been an issue in the locker room. You're trying to move an asset that quite frankly has depreciated in recent weeks due to off ice issues. Is that something that, because you look at the Canucks right now, they're just sitting outside of a playoff spot. What is the optimal time? Do you guys think? This isn't necessarily hire it or fire it, but we'll get back to it. What is an optimal time before that March 7th trade deadline, Cass, that you think that the team would have to either, decide to go all in and just commit to it or become sellers?
Yeah. Man, that's tough because there's a couple teams, particularly, I think it affects more the East than the West, like where there's just more teams that are in it still.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of got to have that Four Nations is like a pre-deadline deadline, don't you?
Yeah.
Like trying to get something done before then. Like in my opinion, that's kind of your timeline. Like if by the time you're kind of in that last week before Four Nations, if you're still out of it, you don't think you're going to make it, I would have to think that that's really when you got to start looking at moving somebody.
Yeah, part of me still not as big a part, but part of me still thinks that they might go, let's just see if we can do this.
I get that sense too. Yep.
And because, Miller was great in the playoffs last year. Pettersson, not so much. But if Pettersson's going, the Canucks might win that series. They're a game away from beating the Oilers there. And that's why in Vancouver, they were so optimistic about going into this year. And I think maybe maybe if we can get to the playoffs, get these two guys playoffs are a different animal. Maybe we can come together and go from there, and then look to the off season to do something. Maybe at the draft, then you look to let Miller go and find something at that point, because it's so hard to replace what he brings, especially from game 83 on. He is just a junkyard dog and is going to create problems playing against the other top players and making life completely difficult for them. And there's not a lot of those guys out there that can do that side of the game and contribute offensively.
Well, Cass, you touched on it, and that's where we're going to head for the second question in Hired or Fired is to the Eastern Conference. And talk about a bottleneck. Oh my word. It is just, it's incredible. It'll be a really exciting finish here for the Eastern Conference because nobody's really out of it. My question to you though, definitely will focus on the two Canadian teams in Montreal and Ottawa. Right now, Montreal is just on the outside looking in. Ottawa's got the last spot. They're both tied with 52 points, but obviously winning percentage comes into play there. Hired or fired, I'll start with you, Gager. And I know this is but just based on the ebbs and flows and knowing who's behind these teams in Boston and New York, hired or fired that both Canadian teams will make the playoffs in the Eastern Division?
My heart says hire it because I'd like to see it. Just the more Canadian teams, the better. Sure. But I'm going to have to fire it. I do think that one of these teams will fall off eventually. I think it's more towards the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah. I just think that they've somehow found something there and I don't know what wave they're riding, but I think they'll go crashing into the reef at some point here. It's It's not their time yet. Ottawa, I just think they've gone through so much. There's a little bit more experience there that this is going to be finally the year that they figure out a way to get to the postseason.
Cass? I know it's a tricky one, and we're really diving. But here's the thing, guys, is that I this is my problem in all sports. It's not just hockey. It's football. I always look at, okay, so Boston and New York are behind them, and they're not far behind them. And you Philly and Pittsburgh. I mean, Boston and New York New York especially is underachieving quite a bit right now. And you wonder, okay, one of those teams has got to rise up. So who's the one that falls out? Is it Columbus? Is it Ottawa? I think, Gage, to what you said about Montreal, they're incredibly hot right now. But what's to say they can't continue that run as well? Right? And because, as far as Canadian sports fans, of course, you'd love to see more Canadian teams in the playoffs. It just makes it better. But Cass, I don't know. I know it's a big ask, but you got to hire to fire it, right?
Yeah. It hurts my heart, but I got to fire it. I got to fire it. I look at that New York team, as you said, and how much they've been underachieving. They're like, if they get hot, they're going to get hot. And I know Montreal has been playing much better, but I kind of share the same opinion as Gager again, which is bizarre.
You guys are entitled to that opinion. You've been there.
Yeah. I just can't see Montreal sustaining. And of course it's possible. I hope they do. I hope Ottawa does. Columbus has been playing really, really well. They've found a way to play a pretty complete team game. And I just can't see New York not making it. So I'm like, okay, it's Ottawa, Columbus, Montreal to me are those three. Then looking at that, and you throw Boston in the mix too. And I'm just like, I can't see both those teams getting in. I can't do it.
This is terrible, Cass. We got to get off the same side of the teeter-totter here. I
know.
Jeez.
Well, okay. Let me make this easier for you guys, so we can get something solid out of you here. Okay. The Metropolitan Division is pretty secure. I mean that there's Washington at 69, Carolina at 61, and New Jersey at 60. The wild card starts at 53. So that's where the Atlantic teams come in. Most notably Tampa Bay, who's sitting at 53 points. Columbus and Ottawa and Montreal. It's just going to be a fantastic finish. So as far as hockey fans go in the Eastern Conference, and maybe that'll lend to what you said earlier, Cass, is that the market will be a little bit more fiery on the Eastern side than it would be here on the Western front. The third question for Hire It or Fire It, presented by GS Construction. And you are listening and watching Two Guys and a Goalie on Edmonton Sports Talk, your clear choice for Edmonton sports. If you do want to chime in, and several of you have been, please do so on the Paris Jewelers inbox, 780-218-9999. The Oscar nominations came out today. So I wanted to talk about actors, most notably one of the greatest actors of our era, Patrick Mahomes. Here's the question. We're going to bring this back to football because I've got my thoughts on this, and I'll see what you guys think. But is Patrick Mahomes, Hire to Fire It? Patrick Mahomes is incredibly talented at selling and becoming an artist in selling his penalties to be, more negligent than they actually are. Is he one of the greatest artists of our time? Hire it or fire it, Gage?
Hire it. He embellishes a lot. Like he'll get hit and then he'll get up and he'll do that little waddle that he does as a walk and kind of and limp a little bit and do the neck thing. He sells it. He sells an injured quarterback almost every time someone not breathes on him. Like that dive that he took. And it was funny listening to Troy Aikman talk about it.
That was great.
Because he was just, you could hear it in the way Aikman described it. He just wanted to rip into him and go, "What are you doing?" He could have hurt himself more just by doing that. He could have just trotted off and did his little trot. But yeah, I would have to say he's worthy of the most outstanding performance in an NFL football game.
Cass?
I I'm gonna fire it because it's just the referees need to recognize that and they should know it at this point. Like, I don't think it's like he's, if we were gonna give him that award, we wouldn't know he's diving.
Yeah.
Right. We wouldn't see that it's like, oh yeah, he sold that. It's like, no, he would just sell it and we would buy into it. But we haven't because we see it. So no, he's not getting that award from me. No chance.
The thing that really gets it for me, guys, is that the first call they had roughing the passer, it's hard to argue that one because there was very minimal contact made helmet to helmet, but by the letter of the law, you can call that, okay? The one that really irks me, and I hope that there is some sort of a change in how this is viewed, because as a quarterback, when Patrick Mahomes is out and juking left, juking right, up, down, backside, he's a runner. Mm-hmm. He has now initiated himself as a runner. He's no longer a passer. He's past the line of scrimmage. That should be treated as a runner. That tackle, they didn't even hit him for starters, but that shouldn't even be, because of course, as a player, you're licking your chops saying, ooh, I get the chance to take out Patrick Mahomes. And even if they did, it's worth the 15 yards. It really is to take out a player of that ilk. So not only are you, as a Chiefs organization, saying, Pat, what the hell are you doing? Get down. Yeah. You're our greatest asset. Get down. But B, you're initiating yourself and you're turning yourself into a runner. So you should get treated as such in the eyes of defenders. Gage?
Let me ask you this, though, because there's been two instances in the postseason here. Baker Mayfield scrambled for one of their scoring drives and initiated contact with a defensive back.
Yep.
Okay. Josh Allen consistently challenges physically.
Sure.
So do the refs see that and then kind of adjust? Because you very rarely see Patrick Mahomes. He's done it once or twice where he's kind of rolled over a guy.
Yep.
But because of the way he dives and goes down, he doesn't initiate that contact, that those forementioned two instances, does he get the benefit of the doubt in those?
Well, here's the thing. The Baker Mayfield play you're referencing was against my Commanders.
Yeah.
And as a defender, you're thinking, okay, is this guy going to pull up and slide at the last minute and then I'm going to get a penalty? So you do get put in an awkward situation where, okay, I can't take your head off. Do you think Baker Mayfield's going to run through a strong safety for any team? No, but he sure made it look like that by bouncing that guy off him. They're in a real, a real state of flux because they can't win in that situation.
Yeah.
You could have knocked Baker's head out of orbit and it would not have been a penalty because he's a runner.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why those rules don't apply for Patrick Mahomes. This isn't a anti-Patrick Mahomes deal or bit, but it just does get a little bit tiresome when those things continue to happen and it's at the hands of the same player. Now we've only got about 5 minutes here left, fellas. What do you guys? Buffalo at Kansas City, okay, and then obviously Washington at Philly. Who you fellas like this weekend? Cass, I'll go to you first.
I want to see your Commanders win and go to the bowl. I want to see it. I'm think terrified. Philly wins.
Yeah,
I think Philly wins. Yeah, I think Philly wins, but I want to see, I would love a Washington Buffalo final. That would be
old timey.
Awesome. That would be old time. It would be amazing. It would be great. And I think Buffalo gets it done, but I think Philly makes it in too. So that's where I'm leaning. What I think is going to happen, but I'm certainly hoping your Commanders get it done, but I don't think they will.
Oh, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Allen Mahomes matchup again. I mean, they that one playoff series where it went back and forth in the last
electric.
Oh my gosh, I love football like that.
The hair on the back of my neck just stood up. So good.
But I
the goose pimples.
I think that KC's going to find a way again. And again, completely selfishly, I would love to see your Commanders get past the Eagles and have Mr. Daniels solve the enigma of the Kansas City Chiefs and take the third away from the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that, and from Patrick Mahomes, I think, and a changing of the guard, so to speak, of the best quarterback in the league from a rookie. It's already been a Cinderella story. Let's just hope that that slipper doesn't fall off.
How to
before
catapult yourself to become to be called a future Hall of Famer 101.
Oh, I know.
If Jaden Daniels could do the unthinkable and get to the Super Bowl, and let alone beat Patrick Mahomes, who's on the
Where is the
quest
Super Bowl
return.
this year?
You know what? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Can find it here for you guys. Here's the thing, guys, on the picks for this weekend. Where is it? Super strong location. This is embarrassing.
It's all right, buddy.
We're gonna find out on the fly. Why waste the Superdome? New Orleans, Nolans.
No.
Here's the deal.
Snowball.
Whichever team. Okay, so here's my concern with Philadelphia. Is 2 words: Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
If the Commanders can somehow keep the over/under on rushing yards for Saquon Barkley is 148.5.
Smokes.
Fellas. I mean, so let's say if the Commanders can hold him to 120, 130, okay, and none of those freakish long runs that just deflate your defense. If they can do that, and Jaden Daniels and that offense can continue to protect the ball, this weekend, you heard it here first. This weekend is going to come down to turnovers and who commits the least of them. Both games. So I mean, I can't help but think that the Commanders, they got a fighting chance here. I mean, they went into what was the best team in the NFC in Detroit and smacked them around like little babies.
Do you think though, does it come down to coaching a little bit with Quinn and what's his? How do you say his last name? Sirianni.
Absolutely.
Because Sirianni's been known to not make the best decisions.
He gets in his feelings a little too much.
This year's been better though.
Yep.
Like I think.
Well, you have an asset like Saquon Barkley that can carry the mail.
Yeah.
But look what happened last week in Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs was running roughshod on Washington. He was averaging. So he averaged 7.5 yards per carry, and they went away from it. I don't know why. Dusty doesn't know why. So if they commit to running the ball, the Philadelphia Eagles will get to the Super Bowl. Yeah. If they get in their own head and try and they find that they're in a bit of a shootout with the Commanders, they might want to pass the ball more. That's the only, I think, realistic chance that the Commanders have of getting that win. Okay, so back to Edmonton to close out the show. This has been Two Guys and a Goalie with Joaquin Gage, Matt Cassian, and myself, Jay Milne, here on Edmonton Sports Talk, your clear choice for Edmonton sports. We have coming up EST Afternoons with Joaquin and Hernan Salas, and of course the Coob sitting behind the monitor. What do you guys think? I mean, what's the key to the game? I know I'm kind of stealing your shine from later tonight, but if you can just give us a little tidbit, a little tease, Cass,
a little preview,
on what's the key to the game for an Oilers victory tonight?
Yep, I think I'll give a little bit of tidbit, and we will talk about this on the Oil Stream pre-game show later tonight. But keeping your emotions in check, I think having them, feeling them, letting them steer you, but not letting them control you. That'll be a big one. And I think for the Edmonton Oilers, if they can do that, harness that energy, I think they'll be okay.
I mean, they had a good game last game. There was 3 instances where, there's the attention to details, right? But I think it's one of the, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Cass, but I think one of the key points is keep learning how to play without McDavid. Find some chemistry within the lines. There's opportunity for certain players to step up and do something. Maybe the Nacho Man can keep going his way, right? So I think just take the good things from last game and keep moving forward. But yeah, learn how to win without your best player is always beneficial, I think.
I don't know that we'll see Nacho Man in Ice District for a while, Joaquin. Okay, guys, this has been great. Thank you. We got ESC Afternoons coming up, followed by the Reed Wilkins Show from 3 to 6, which will take you right to the GCL pregame show with Tom, Hernan, and Matt Cassian. This has been great. Thank you for listening to Two Guys and a Goalie on Edmonton Sports Talk. On behalf of Matt Cassian, Joaquin Gage, I'm Jay Milne. Have yourself a great day.